On you, my friend. 48 points right now. Gregor's with a lot of room to make up. He needs to start winning. He really doesn't have a choice from this point out. He just has to win out and hope that the other players fall down the rankings a bit. So in my mind, this is really all about Riku and can he keep pace with the top players at the top of the standings?
Well, Flourishing Fox is never a bad place to start, so let's see how things do unfold here.
Yeah, seriously. And, he's facing down an 80 card deck here in Gregor's hands. And, he doesn't always have the answer that he needs that time. And as you can see, he's got two of his mirror specific cards in hand with Disdainful Stroke and Jwari Disruption. Those are not going to do anything against that turn one Flourishing Fox. And it's going to be a huge problem because binding the old gods is currently his only answer.
Well, the upsides and the downsides of playing an 80 card deck. There's a downside. Especially when you're playing Emergent Ultimatum, is sometimes you draw one of your Emergent Ultimatum bullets there in Kiora, Best the Sea God. Less than ideal of a draw step there for Kowalski.
That's right. And he does get to set up for a turn 3 binding here, so he can at least stem the bleeding on this Flourishing Fox, but it's going to get in for a lot before it goes.
Here we go. Now we're just cooking every which way. Right? We got Improbable Alliance. Now we're making little flyers, recycling. We've already got land 4 rolled up for the Zenith Flares, plural. I mean, this is really all you could ask for. Binding the Old Gods is going to come down and do some work here, thanks to accelerating to it. But this is a pretty gosh darn good start here for Riku.
So down to 13, the double flare. And now he's hitting from another angle with the double Improbable Alliance. Like this just doesn't. I don't know. I don't want to say that there's no way out for Kowalski because he does have a powerful hand himself. Gargaroth goes a long way to stemming the bleeding. Shadow's Verdict can reset all these tokens. Okay, same thing with Extinction Event. But it just feels like there's a relentlessness to Riku here and his draw with the double flare and the double Improbable Alliance that he's just going to be able to kind of keep doing this. Like you could reset all you want, but he'll just have more tokens.
I guess the one thing I'll say here that's a little bit interesting is just these Zenith Flares, as they stand, dealing 6. They're not the most powerful Zenith Flares we've ever seen. Doesn't mean they're bad, obviously, but they're not at their absolute best right now. So we get to see the Pyromancer joined by the 2 1/1 flyers, 2 flares in the holster. I think they're up to, they're at 6 right now. Of course, they're going to get bigger as the game goes on, but the goal here is that one of them's got to resolve. Disdainful Stroke has got one covered. The other one, thus far, does appear to be clear for takeoff, though.
I wouldn't be surprised if Riku tried to play a game where he made both of them lethal, right? Rather than trying to 7 + 7. Okay, I got you. I think that it depending on how things go, he's 1 mana away from being able to activate the alliances. He is currently out of cycling cards. His hand consists of just the 2 Zenith Flare. So the next draw step that's coming up is going to be an interesting one for sure. But he's really giving Gregor's all he can handle here.
I mean, this turn, we got a little Elder Gargaroth plus Disdainful Stroke up, right? Am I counting that right? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. That's not so bad.
Hey, that's pretty good. And like I said, it gets interesting. If Riku, triple Zenith Flare in hand now. If he has to start firing these off at Gargaroths, it's not really where he wants to be, but I don't see how he can just let a Gargaroth stay on the battlefield. Given the composition of 2 1/1 flyers and an 0/4, the Iron Crate Pyromancer having joined the team last turn here for Kumagai, how are you going to deal with the Gargaroth? The life gain, the creatures, the cards? I mean, any option there for Kowalski can really put him ahead.
I mean, it's pretty easy in quotes, right? You just, I guess I'll just Zenith Flare that for 6, and then I get to keep attacking and everything else. But the reality is that one of Disdainful Stroke that's hiding out there in Kowalski's hand is actually looking pretty darn good right now in this game and can be a real turning point. I think you have to fire off this first Zenith Flare at the Gargaroth. We're going to see the counterspell right away. And now the dynamic of this game is going to shift, and was a runaway earlier. Things are changing here.
Absolutely. And look at this Shadow's Verdict here from Grzegorz Kowalski, but he also just has the Gargaroth ready to rumble.
Yeah, he could Shadow's Verdict away these lesser creatures. Gargaroth comes in, trigger. Hey, do you want to draw? Do you want to gain 3? Do you want to make a 3/3? Well, we'll see ultimately which route you want to go down. But this is feeling advantageous now here for Kowalski.
It really is. His hand is so powerful. Shadow's Verdict resolves, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him just start making beasts and try to get this game done. No, he's going to go for the life gain and try to neutralize the potential copies of Zenith Flare in hand, which is a smart play because he doesn't know it, but Riku has 2.
Yeah, and Flare is down to 5 now as far as power is concerned, as far as how much damage it's dealing, excuse me. So it's not really at its best, and Probable Alliance is going to get activated to make a couple of 1/1s, but those 1/1s in the face of a Gargaroth, those aren't scary. You don't care that much about that.
Right. It's a type of thing where Kowalski won't be able to get in for damage really ever because Riku Kumagai can simply just tap his 6 lands and get 2 1/1 flyers really whenever he wants on his turn. So the prospects of the Gargaroth actually killing aren't particularly high, but just attacking is where you want to be. And now here's Kioribes the Sea God hitting the battlefield too. And all of a sudden Kowalski has 14 power out and a very threatening Kioribes the Sea God trigger next turn.
Well, let's start cycling maybe a little. Okay, make a couple of Knuckleheads. You've got a Flare. Flare can finally take down this very annoying Gargaroth. But I guess you're going to gain some life, right? You're gaining some life, go up to 14. So, this is 8/8 isn't going to kill you. Yeah, the creatures are going to get tapped. You get to get in a couple of points here. And now, as this game kind of goes back and forth, Temple of Malady, the draw, now in a weird way, you're kind of hoping that Kowalski kind of bricks off a couple of turns if you're Kumagai. And you can see Kumagai, he's sweating it up top there on that camera.
Oh, he is. Hands, he's got the not like this pose going. And we're going to see Yorion hit the battlefield from the companion zone to hand to battlefield, and that's going to blink Kioribes Sea God right before it's going to hit chapter 3 next turn. That'll bring it back in and make yet another 8/8 here on the end step. That is a lot of pressure that is being applied here by Kowalski. 2 8/8s and a 4/5 flyer versus 4 1/1s, but they're tapped. That said, there's Zenith Flare in hand here for Kumagai. You have to wonder if he can really afford to kill Yorion with it just for the life bump and to get the threat off the battlefield. He may just need to make tokens with his Improbable Alliance and hope that they're around to block.
Yeah, so this is an interesting situation we're getting into now as well, because I think you want to, well, I'm done. Never mind.
Wow. It was Emergent Ultimatum off the top of the library for Kowalski. This draw has been amazing for him.
It was.
He's just going to line this up.
I was going to talk about how you got to cycle on Kowalski's turn, right? And then now you get the opportunity to make your blockers, grow your Zenith Flare. But if this Emergent Ultimatum isn't game winning, I don't know what is. Yeah, and now we are all done there. Boy, those pretty good string of draws to get yourself out of that situation there for Kowalski. Well done.
Incredible. Well done, Grzegorz Kowalski, and Riku Kumagai packs it in with the ultimatum still on the stack. He says, I'm not going to be able to beat all of this. As you mentioned, he did have a line of play. Remember, you have to draw your second card there for the Improbable Alliances, but he had 2 cycling effects in hand, and so he was able to cycle twice on Grzegor's turn, which would trigger those after the trigger from the Kioribes Sea God, so he could actually block with his 1/1s. But the addition of that Emergent Ultimatum put it out of reach there for Kumagai, and he loses game number 1. These are big moments here, particularly for Riku Kumagai. We look over at Grzegor's side, and he's at 46 points. Now, that doesn't mean that he's eliminated. So, of course, these matter for him, but he needs a lot of things to go right. I mean, winning here would be just merely step 1 of a multi-step process for him to actually make it up into that top 2 seed. But for Riku, it's a lot more straightforward with the 2 extra points. So he actually has more to lose here as we work our way into game number 2.
He does, but for Kowalski's side of things, what I always find compelling in spots like this is you just control what you can control. You don't worry about much else, right? He can't control how the opponents play, the tiebreakers, all the other scenarios. All he can do is say, you know what, I'm going to play the best Magic that I can. Maybe I get a little bit of lucky along the way. That's never hurt anybody, right? And past that, I'm not going to worry about anything else. And you saw there, some fortunate draw steps, yes, but he played a very good game of Magic, even though he was getting beaten down pretty early. Control what you can control, and thus far he's done a pretty darn good job of that.
Yeah, that's a great point, Cedric. From his point, he doesn't care about the points, right? Like that's not actually relevant to what he's trying to do right now. It's almost a byproduct of his job, which is to just focus in on this match. Picking up a win there was nice. I mean, that was a triple Zenith Flare draw with 2 Improbable Alliance and a turn 1 Flourishing Fox from Riku, and Gregorz just kind of mowed right through all of it.
Yeah, I mean, you can't say that Riku didn't have a good hand that game. He got to do it at all stages of the game, right? Kick things off with the Fox, as you mentioned, Improbable Alliance cranking out some tokens, and then Zenith Flares, plural, in hand that game, and he was able to cast all of those cards and end up losing. So that kind of goes to show you some of the appeal of this Sultai Ultimatum deck, which is it can work itself through a lot of problems because it is very powerful.
Very sideboard-centric hand here for Grzegorz Kowalski. You see he's kind of stacked up on removal. He's got Shadow's Verdict, he's got Karavek, he has Extinction Event, and he has an Eliminate. Now he's looking for lands here to get this Cultivate going. I wouldn't be surprised to see him bottom here.
Wah, wah.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a whiff. He also has Test of Talents out of the board in hand, which if he can nab a Zenith Flare with that particular card, that's a big game too. All right, bottom, Lando? No, it's Binding the Old Gods into Elder Gargaroth.
Ugh.
Disaster here for Grzegorz Kowalski. You know, he had every reason to think that he had a great chance to hit a land there, having seen 4 cards since his last draw step, and he could not find a land. Now he's got some decisions to make here. I mean, right now he has to discard, which is yikes. He looks really disappointed.
Wouldn't you be?
I would.
I just need that third land for Cultivate, baby, and I'm rocking and rolling. Now, this one isn't over, far from it, because it's not like Kumagai has anything going on. Got a lot of counter magic, got a Lurrus in hand, of course, has cards to cycle. And now we're going to get a little quick and dirty here with the Valiant Rescuer. Okay, sure.
That's right. So you can start going wide there, but the good news for Kowalski is he already has the answer for the Rescuer with Eliminate in hand. So there's only going to be the one trigger, one left over. A little bit annoying perhaps, but not anything that he can't handle. And another miss here for Kowalski. He finds Extinction Event, another 4-drop off the top, and he's going to miss another land drop. The only good news for him is that he got that Eliminate out of his hand, so he doesn't have to discard this time.
I mean, this game is incredibly strange. I guess we might actually, what are we going to see? Another cycle here, maybe? A Duress is another non-land. I mean, you might as well see what you're working against.
Yeah.
Is this going to get negated or some other type of counterspell? Because as you take a look at Kumagai's hand is not the best with all of these counterspells, and there's a Mystical Dispute. So he's loaded up on the counter magic, doesn't really have any pressure going, but is maybe going to try to play a game around, play Lurrus with a counterspell up to protect it. And then once I get to untap with Lurrus, this game should be pretty easy. That would be my assumption.
Good God, at least it's a land at Seagate Restoration off the top of the library. And that allows him to play Cultivate, and that is not going to resolve. Kumagai is like, I know you're struggling on mana here. I could just negate this.
I guess I like cycling Memory Leak first to get some information, but yeah, I want to snap off this negate. Say, no way. Get out of here.
Especially given that Kumagai has yet to really find that pressure. You mentioned it last turn, chipping away for 1 a turn with the Soldier's a thing, but like he really needs to get a board state going and start slamming while Kowalski's missing mana. And he does exactly that. Lurrus into Valiant Rescuer, and it's Wolf Willow Haven off the top. Once again, he really just needed a land here. He has access to so much stuff, but he's going to have to settle for Wolf Willow Haven, leave up Test of Talents, go.
Yeah, that's brutal, not finding the 4th land on tap there, because that's a turn where you can play Karavek and basically shut out the stuff that Lurrus can bring back that's relevant, and also making Lurrus just into a 2-1. Now, instead, all you got to do is just play a Wolf Willow Haven, pass the turn back, and now your next couple of cards are going to get stroked, and this one's going to get ended. And so this counterspell package that we've seen Kumagai bring in against multiple players here this weekend continues to work out pretty well. Yes, it was kind of exacerbated a little bit because of Kowalski's mana issues, but this counterspell package has been on display multiple times here this weekend in matches that we've watched, and it has, I would say it's overperformed.
Yeah, it's about to win the game here. Karavek goes on the stack. Still no land there for Kowalski. He did have access to 4 mana, so he could cast Karavik, but a Disdainful Stroke locks up the game for Riku Kumagai. Riku said, okay, you're going to miss land drops. I'm going to pounce on you. I'm going to counter anything you do, get some type of board state going, and that got the job done. So there we go. Game number 2 in the books. Riku Kumagai evens things up, and we get a game 3 decider between these two players. Grzegorz, boy, the table was set, right? He had it all in hand and a really good chance to hit that 3rd land drop on 3. That miss off of the double scry from the Omen into the draw step for nothing, plus the draw from the Omen. And that ended up setting the stage for Riku to be able to take advantage of even a meager board state like a 1/1 got in for, 4 damage, 5 damage, and then he was able to finally rebuild with Luris and get the job done.
Totally agree.
Incredible. Grzegorz is going to have to shake that one off right quick and get right back into the action here. Very unlucky there for Grzegorz.
Yeah, I mean, it's all part of it, right? Even a deck that's got, 31, sometimes 32 or 33 lands in an 80-card deck, sometimes that one can miss too, even though it does have cultivates and a bunch of way to find land drops. But it looks like lands are not going to be the issue this time around. You see Omen of the Sea in hand, a couple of lands already, cultivate, and then something to work towards in Emergent Ultimatum. Lot to like about this hand here for Kowalski.
That's right. You see that cultivate just looming. If he can get that thing resolved, he'll feel so much better than last game.
Let's see these cards. An Omen of the Sea and a Clearwater Pathway. Well, do you want another Omen? Going to combo well with Urian if that ever works itself into the game. Don't know if he's interested in another land as well when he does have Cultivate in hand, but it looks like that question's been answered for us. So going to take that Pathway there, Marshall.
Yeah, that's right. And, he's got the Cultivate. He has the Emergent Ultimatum in his hand, and you can tell that he'd like to do some combination of Cultivate now, resolve something that can take care of the board, and then try to set up as best he can for the Emergent Ultimatum.
Mm-hmm.
These cycling decks do get pretty counter-heavy post-board, it's kind of a double-edged sword for them. On one hand, it gives them the ability to deal with really a lot of what Grzegorz is doing, particularly because the other cards have cycling, so they'll get to those counters if they want them. The downside is it does weaken the primary game plan of the cycling deck. It actually has an effect in that sometimes they're just sitting there with a bunch of counters and you're building up your mana or, resolving something that they can't counter, and all of a sudden the game slips away.
Yeah, your clock isn't that fast. You don't have the velocity to get through your deck to make a really large Zenith Flare, stuff like that. Like, these counter spells are powerful. We saw that on display somewhat in the last game and in previous matches with Kumagai, but it definitely does change the tenor of your deck, unquestionably.
Big question here for Kumagai because, he'd love to get more board state rolling here, but does he really want to add a Flourishing Fox to the Valiant Rescuer that's already there and then have them get swept away somehow?
Fair question.
It's risky business. He's probably thinking about cards like Karavik, Extinction Event, Shadow's Verdict, and kind of trying to decide, well, what does the board look like if my opponent has those cards? So, for example, Karavik could come down, take out the Rescuer, but then the Flourishing Fox could get out of range of it with cycling.
So here's a fun sub-game on Kowalski's side. You mentioned Karavik, you mentioned there is Extinction Event, Elder Gargaroth. Which one do you want to lead off with here? Because you're thinking of Disdainful Stroke, right?
Right.
So in a way, you might just be going like, you know what? I'm going to throw this one. I'm going to play the first spell into the graveyard. Insofar as I expect it to be countered by Disdainful Stroke, right?
Right. The really interesting point said is, what if he does Extinction Event? Does it get Disdainful Stroked? Right? Because it can only kill one of these creatures.
Let's go.
He's going to go for Karavik.
Okay.
Karavik threatens both creatures, but wouldn't actually get the job done of killing the Flourishing Foxes. Memory Leak can get cycled. There's also a boon up there as well.
Yep. You can cycle this other Fox now because that's trash.
And it's going to be a land to follow up here for Grzegorz. And as you mentioned, the Flourishing Fox won't even hit the battlefield. It's just going to get cycled away. And there's another one.
Yep. That's a cycle party now. Yeah, let's get through this. Okay, Triump's not bad actually because needed a little help casting Zenith Flare. Can't imagine a block is going to happen, so a little cycling. Well, do we cycle now, or do we just leave up negate? We probably just leave up negate.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay.
Yeah, Kumagai's just going to leave up negate after playing a land, passes the turn back over to Grzegorz.
Or should I say, leave up disdainful stroke, Marshall.
Right.
Because it's always disdainful stroke.
Look at Grzegorz. He's like, huh? What am I going to do against disdainful stroke?
Yep. Let's play pretend for a moment. All right, well, let's try this. I think that's going to get negated. I think we need this flourishing fox around to continue to pressure.
That's really the question here for Riku. Can he let the flourishing fox go, or is that going to be part of his primary game plan?
Now, if you're negating here, that's one less negate you have for Emergent Ultimatum. Maybe hoping that Kowalski doesn't have that. Obviously, we can see that he does.
He's lined up for it next turn as well.
Mm-hmm.
And given the fact that he's churned through a few of the counters here.
Ooh, okay, okay.
Oh, hello. Disdainful stroke off of that last cycle means that Riku Kumagai can breathe a sigh of relief because he now has protection from some of the best stuff that Grzegorz can throw at him. And as it turns out, Grzegorz has some of the best stuff. He has an Elder Gargaroth and he has Emergent Ultimatum in hand. So that disdainful stroke, very timely for Kumagai.
See, now we draw Pathway 2. Okay. Now Fox gets to crash in for 5. Going to bring Kowalski down to 9. All right, this game's getting good.
Yeah, let's not forget that there's a Zenith Flare for 6 in hand right now for Kumagai. So there's only so many more hits that Kowalski can take in combination with a Flare and survive.
Yeah, I kind of like this strategy that Kumagai has after sideboard. It reminds me kind of like I'm going to date myself a little bit with this reference here, but kind of like a counter slivers or fish style approach where, I just got like 1 threat, maybe 2 threats, and then some counter spells and some ways to interact with you, and I can protect these threats long enough to cross the finish line before your big spells resolve, because I'm going to counter your big spells and ideally draw enough counter spells like a disdainful stroke there to get me home.
Interestingly, this time you see Grzegorz recognize he needs to hold back with Kervek, and he's going to chump block probably because he's looking at his life total and thinking, well, I could just be dead, even just from the Fox.
Mm-hmm.
But you can take a look at Grzegorz' face, and it kind of tells the tale here. This draw for Kumagai, he has had just enough at every juncture. There's the chump block from Kervek. So that's going to keep Grzegorz' life total at 9. But calling that a healthy life total might not be accurate. And at least as things stand, he has one last shot. It's got the Emergent Ultimatum.
As you said, as things currently stand, it's resolving.
But there could be some cycling here. It's going to be land go. Palaka Predation. Now, he doesn't have enough to fire that off and Emergent Ultimatum here. So that's probably just not going to be relevant.
And the thing that's a little bit interesting here is, is there any real decision to be made here? I think it's just cross your fingers and play Ultimatum. The other option, of course, is add Ur into your hand and then cast it. But that's not a game-winning play. That's a play to extend the game as opposed to this is one to catch all the way back up. Looks like
that's right.
Looks like we're gonna
let's
cycle
see if Kumagai can find a negate. He cycles into a Fox. He can cycle one more time. Still have 2 mana up.
I mean, you can find Disdainful Stroke. You can find negate. You can find Mystical Dispute.
Yep.
So like the majority of your counter spells are live on this. Actually, all your counter spells are live on this cycle.
He could lock up the match here if he can find it. No, it's another land.
All right, so we get one more cycle here to Mystical Dispute, but he didn't cycle.
Yeah, I think he doesn't have the mana. I think they're both. It's a 2 mana cycle.
Oh, Rescuers is a 2 mana cycle. Okay, yep.
Yeah. So that means that Emergent Ultimatum's going to resolve. So can Grzegorz Kowalski stabilize and find the win off of this Emergent Ultimatum?
Okay, so what are we going to get here? Alron's Epiphany is step 1. That part's pretty easy because that's like always in these piles. But now part of me is like, is there a way to get a discard spell in the mix? Is there a way to remove cards from the graveyard to lessen Zenith Flare and get that into the mix? So it looks like we got a little Valky action. And then like I'm kind of like part of me is like looking at that duress that he just went by. I know it's like weak. I'm kind of like, I don't know. How bad is that? I mean, you can obviously go much higher with a card like Vorinclex, and that's what he's going to do. So no small stuff.
Yeah, he didn't go for Shadow's Verdict there. So what that means is that if Kumagai just says, okay, fine, you don't get Alrund's Epiphany, he should be in good shape. Because remember, he has a Zenith Flare, which, what is it on right now?
It's like at least 8.
Yeah. So that means that it would be lethal because he has a Cycler in his hand. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, I don't think, well, is he actually going to get Epiphany? Oh, he did get
right. So he did, and the reason is because of the that he would get his graveyard exiled if he did it the other way with Tibalt.
Yep. And so now you get Palaka. You get to cast this. Let's see. This is 6. This is an attack for 8. You get to get a little look-ski at the hand. So
he's
6,
deciding
7,
if he wants to sacrifice the Omen.
Mm-hmm.
So Wolfwillow Haven, not a draw that he wanted to see, but the Palaka Predation can take away the Zenith Flare.
Yep. And so now it comes down to you have to top deck a Zenith Flare to get yourself out of this situation.
Wow. This got very, very interesting. And as it stands, Riku can cycle on end step, have his draw step plus some number of cycling, and hit another flare for the win.
Well,
Grzegorz does not have protection from the flare right now.
I don't know about you, Marshall, but I love myself a good sweat, so.
Oh, me too, buddy. And we got one lined up here. Kumagai is going to be feeling the stress here because there's every chance that this match comes down to those next couple of draw steps.
And worth noting that Zenith Flare was going to be for 8. So you cycle this Valiant Rescuer. That's going to be card 9 with cycling in the graveyard, which means it would be a lethal Zenith Flare with that cycle. That's going to give you at least 2 draw steps at it.
Of course, we can go for maximum sweat, right? And just rip a bunch of cyclers in a row.
Absolutely. I'm wondering
critically, Kumagai did play
these creatures.
He did play tap land last turn as well, did Kumagai. So he's given himself the most mana possible to do this. It was a nice setup for him. Down to 5 he goes, and all Grzegorz can do is spend his mana. He can go for Wolfwillow Haven and Yorion, but those aren't things that are going to affect the game at the moment. He is going to need to just hope that Riku Kumagai doesn't find a Zenith Flare with these next few looks at the top of his library.
All right. Let's start.
So first cycle. Riku's like, let's just make this easy. Hit me that flare right now. No, it's a boon into a land, but he does have another cycle at the ready here. That was not good, though. He hit 1 cycler.
Okay.
Can he cast it and survive a turn?
That's one of the things I'm thinking about right now is, does it make sense to just hardcast Boon? Does it make sense to get Luris back, right? Does it make sense to go add Luris, play a land, play a Fox? Does that do anything for you?
We just broke Riku Kumagai. He is facing a huge decision. Obviously, there's some temptation to just cycle and try to win the game on the spot. He's not dead if he doesn't find it. But at the same time, my goodness sakes, he might be able to just play a longer game here. And look at this. He's just going to cast the boon. And he's going to be glad he did, because he just found lands and cyclers there. There was no Zenith Flare to be found.
All right, so Fox is on blocking duty, assuming no removal spell.
Yeah. Binding off the top.
I mean, you get to Scry to really check it out now in the upkeep, too.
This is huge for Kowalski. He has to feel thrilled that this is how this went. He actually gets to look and see if he can't find some removal. Kumagai has nothing to defend himself.
Make sure you tap that mana right in case you find like an Emergent Ultimatum, or, you know, it's not just a clean removal spell. But removal spell's game over, folks.
Okay, he gets 2 looks right now, and it's a Triumph and a land, so that's not it. He could clean draw it, though.
That'll work.
The top, and that should do it. He can clean away all the little guys and send Vorinclex in for the victory. Grzegorz Kowalski found just what he needed here.
Sick. Oh, that is such a win. That is such a brutal loss and such a huge win for Kowalski. Unreal.